Good evening, welcome to Presspass. My name is Mark Masai, and tonight this is what we have lined up for you. We will be revisiting the Solai tragedy and see what should still be pursued in this story. Surprise, surprise, new NYS scam broken by Sunday Nation will be the talk of town for weeks, but is that where this story will end? To my guest right next to me is Patrick Gathara. Thank you for joining us after quite some weeks that we haven't had you on, although people will say that you're here every week. He is a curator with The Elephant and is a columnist, an analyst, and a cartoonist. Next to him is Mr. Fredrick Okango. He is the Secretary General at Third Way Alliance, has been a colleague here at the Nation Media Group, and now is pursuing politics. And next to him is Oduor, a colleague here at the Nation Media Group. He is, of course, Secretary General at the Kenya Union of Journalists, but in terms of his daily practice, he is a sub-editor at the East African under the Nation Media fold. So it, of course, as you have been informed and as you've followed this tragedy in this past week, the death toll is now at 46. I'm talking about the Solai Dam tragedy, and this is a story that has shocked many. And if my director would be able to show some of the pictures as we continue with this conversation, this is what I'd want to start with: the tragedy, the story, where we have it as at now, and whether there is more to pursue. So I'll throw it to the panel and jump in, gentlemen, wherever you can. Yes, we have been told about the death toll. Yes, we have been told that the investigations are going to be undertaken in the next 2 weeks. I believe the ODPP is expecting a report from the IG in investigations, and all the dams in the country will be inspected. Will that be the logical end of this story? I'll start with you, Gathara.
No, it shouldn't be. I think that we need to really stop looking at these things such as, and dealing with them in the present. The fact is, we've got to ask questions about the systems that led, or systemic failures that led to this. Mm-hmm. So that in as much as people might be prosecuted for this, that doesn't end it. You know, we've got to then ask what actually failed. We knew rains were coming. You know, this was told by the Met office a while back. So why weren't inspections done then? I mean, it seems to me kind of logical that if we think we're going to have huge amounts of rain, we'll be looking at these things and asking ourselves, where are the risks? And dams seem to me to be, a big risk. Mm-hmm. You know, the second thing is there are questions about these particular dams, and I'm sure there are many similar ones across the country, where you've got the government saying that they were illegal, but they've been there for 20 years. People have complained to authorities about it, etc. You know, so why were they still there? You know, so those are systemic failings. And if we don't fix those, all we are doing is setting ourselves up for yet another tragedy down the road. So no, the story doesn't end with the prosecutions. You know, story should continue, and we should look at those systems. And actually, even if government comes out and says, yeah, we will fix 1, 2, 3 things, the question is whether they actually go ahead and repair those systems, whether they actually institute new systems and we actually see them working.
Yes, and the great pictures that you see from my colleague Robert Gishira have to get credit where it's due, just to give you a good perspective of the extent of damage from the tragedy. Fredrick, you have been within this media house yourself, and another actually, the Standard Group, sure. And you follow closely how we report on matters, and now of course you hold fort for the Third Way Alliance. You've made your position clear on this tragedy, and as the story was told, as it broke, I believe credit where it's due as well. Citizen TV broke this story, and it, of course, dominated the headlines. Were you content in how we approached this whole story?
Well, I think the media, to be fair to the media, they did a good job in reporting it. But for me, what I would say is, first of all, the Solai tragedy did not happen as an act of God. The Solai tragedy was deliberate. I mean, it was an act of deliberate human error, because this is a wall that was built out of mud. And again, we have seen in this country when the government authorities have failed to do oversight on issues that they're supposed to manage. Today, we are talking about loss of lives. Who is going to compensate the families? Who is going to compensate for the loss of property? We, as opposition party, we have said it. And in our statement today that we sent to the newsroom, we have given the government 14 days. Failure to act will invoke fully the Article 258 and sue them. Because the NEMA ought to have known. The county government of Nakuru ought to have known. Ministry of Water ought to have known. Where were they? We are a reactionary, state. When things go wrong, we now run to inspect other dams if we are going to see the other thing happening. Yes. But we are saying that when such things happen, and then we wait to sue people, we wait to talk tough as ministers in charge and DPP and so on and so forth, yes, it's not helping anything. We have given the Ministry of Water, NEMA, and even the owner of that land, it's called Perry,
Patel, yes,
Patel, and the managing director, the general manager of that coffee estate. We have given them 14 days. They must compensate the families that have lost lives. They must compensate the people who have lost property because of this tragedy. If they don't do that, then we'll go ahead and sue. And that one, we can tell them. We'll invoke the Article 258 that gives everyone the right to constitute court proceedings.
Yes.
Because that is given in the law.
All right. And Eric, we always have to be careful from the political ilk not to have them dictate how the story will go. I mean, right now he says they will be prosecuting, they'll take prosecutorial measures if their demands are not met. But as a sub-editor with the East African, in this particular story, from where we stand right now, the rescue operations are going to be closed shortly, soon, because they say the missing people have been accounted for. Where would you guide your colleagues to pursue this particular story?
Yes, obviously, if you look at what the media has done over the past few days when this tragedy happened, largely, journalists have just told the story as it broke out at that particular time by giving the death toll and what is happening there. But I think there are some deeper issues that actually need to be looked into. We need to find out, first of all, the structural composition of that dam. How was it constructed? Did the engineers and the people who are working on it follow the law? Were they professional in their work? Because obviously you'll see a project like that and a big dam like that, you'll always get that there is there are supposed to be tunnels. That in the event that there is an overflow of water, then there is a way how you can direct this water to somewhere else where they do not cause the destruction like we've seen. So we will expect that the journalists right now need to tell us more about that. How was this dam constructed? Did they follow the law? Was it approved? Was there any supervision? Then then from there, because from what we understand that actually apparently there have been a lot of complaints about the existence of that dam, but no action has ever been taken. So we need also to make follow-ups and find out who was sleeping on the job when there were complaints.
Can it be argued that journalists as well probably slept on the job because politicians and other leaders have raised concern over the dam previously? I believe Kwegi Wamwere is one of them. And there wasn't quite some keen follow-up on this. Is that word you've used, follow-up?
Yes, and I think follow-up is very critical in journalism because people will always raise questions, tragedies will always be there, but at least there's need for follow-up so that we just dig in and find out who actually is supposed to do what and why that was not done. Right. So I think there is still a lot that needs to be done about this story so that some people can also be held to account because, you know, in Kenya, we are used to forgetting once these things have happened, but I must also comment that I'm surprised that opposition, they are talking about going to invoke Article 28 of the Constitution. They are going to 258 of the Constitution. They are going to sue people left, right, and center. I wouldn't expect that to come from a serious opposition party. First of all, we want to see opposition going for people who bear greatest responsibilities in this matter. We haven't seen them talking about the Minister of Water and Irrigation. Where is the Cabinet Secretary? Where is the Principal Secretary? We start there at the top,
right,
so that then they can escalate. Because what will happen, you'll sue and maybe they'll go for the small man, or maybe some supervisor at the county level. Those are the people who are going to be victimized. But to realize that maybe this investor, probably he's enjoying some kind of political support and political protection from the big boys in this country. So, or big boys or the big girls in this country. So we'll expect that as opposition, we should go for the big fish here. We need to find out
Be careful
who is
when you
protecting
say as opposition, we will go. It sounds like you are from the opposition.
No, I'm saying opposition as a country.
Okay,
as a
okay,
country.
May I say something?
Right.
I think there's several things we need to disaggregate here. I don't have a problem with anybody, including the party, in essence, going to court, or instituting what might be private prosecutions, But I have an issue. When we use the word "I'm going to sue," it implies we're going to be demanding people pay up.
Yes.
And we've got to be aware, if we sue government, that government doesn't have money. It is our money that's going to go. And I don't think we should be in a situation where we are, public funds are being used to compensate, in essence, for the failures, for private failures. That the people who should actually have to pay, and even if we do pay out compensation, we should demand this money back, is a company that built the dam. Is a person who built the dam. That's where the fault is.
Yes.
Secondly, along that chain, that's why I kept talking about systems. Along the entire chain, there have been failures, and these failures go right up to the top. So Eric is very right. The CS is responsible, bears responsibility here. And in fact, I would have expected, if we were in an actual country where systems work, where by now they'd have resigned, they should have gone, or at least the president should have fired them. Because the fact is, all these failures have happened under their watch. The reason we pay them a salary is so to ensure that these sorts of things don't happen. And I'll say one last thing, is it's depressingly familiar, the language that government uses to discuss these sorts of disasters. So suddenly we learn that, oh, this was illegal, we had warned them to take it down or whatever, and stuff, and then nothing was done. This is the same language you hear when buildings collapse in Nairobi.
Yes.
It's always, oh, but that building was already...
It was a condemned building.
Condemned, etc. But
yes,
people are still living in it, it was still standing, nothing was done.
Right.
So we need to get away from that. And that's what I'm saying, we need to go beyond simply saying, let's punish a few people, to actually looking at the systems that allow this to happen and fix those.
Fredrick, just clarify on the issue of suing and compensation and where that would go and what you're pursuing.
All these things are fruits of corruption. If you journalists follow this story keenly, you'll realize that probably this dam ought to have been stopped at some point, but because the owner had some way through the government, it could have even, you never know what happened. But what we are saying is, if you're the owner of the land, you, Mr. Perry, and this land was built on a hill using mud, and there was tragedy, there was signs of tragedy that this thing one day would collapse after overfill, then he ought to have known that he's risking the lives of the people living around there. In fact, some of the reports that the media gave is that former Member of Parliament, Koigwa Mwere, had even brought this thing into Parliament several years ago.
Yes.
And this thing was stopped. And you know that the people of those areas were even denied water because they diverted the water that was going to serve the people, the community, into this dam. That one alone should constitute the prosecution. But what we are saying is, who is the person that is bearing the greatest responsibility? There are two people. Number one, the owners of the land.
Okay.
Number two, the government oversight bodies, NEMA, ministry, and the rest. Those people must be held responsible. We have lost lives. Over 23 people have lost lives. Today, the families are crying. It was Mother's Day the other day. And some of these people lost their loved one. Their mothers died. Their sisters died. Who is compensating them? Today we are talking about what is the cause. But we are not also talking about what are we going to do to the damages and the people or the families that have lost life.
Yes.
So we are saying that while the Constitution, you know, Mark, we are a party that respects the Constitution and the rule of law. That is principle number 5 that govern our party. We must act in the interest of the public, including any other corruption case they were talking about. That is what we are going to do.
All right.
The government will not sue itself. Somebody must take action. And that person is the people of
May I
Kenya
ask-
and any other person that
Real
feels
quick
that
before I
is-
throw this to
May
Eric.
responsible.
may I ask you, as an opposition party, as you define yourselves,
They call themselves.
you know, shouldn't you be coming up with policy proposals, with legislative proposals that say this is how we fix the system? Because it's obvious our system is broken. So it's fine. I mean, and I'm quite happy that you're going to institute private prosecutions. But really, your job should be done also within Parliament.
Gathara,
And about
let
saying,
me just cut you short.
Yes.
When we conceded defeat in the last 2 elections, we told Kenyans that we live to fight another day. But as we live to fight another day, we will not leave our ideas out. We'll pursue them.
So
One of
what are
the
your
things that we
ideas?
did is to form what we call a sort of shadow cabinet. This cabinet has come up with a policy that would mirror the ones that's in government. Under these, we gave a statement today. I'm sure you have not seen it. Maybe you need to find time and read it. What we are saying is, while we are constructing dams, what are the approval requirements that NEMA put in place? Who is involved? All those issues are there in that statement. But maybe just for the interest of time, what we have been saying is not only about the issues that are affecting the tragedy that about the collapsing of dams. We have talked about issues to do with the corruption. We have talked about the killings in Kapedo. We have talked about the
I'm
issues
sorry,
on the accident.
you're running away.
What
I'm
we are
just
saying,
asking
but Gathara,
specifically
just give me time.
on
What
this.
we are saying on this, specifically on this issue, we have
What
put-
are your proposals?
Our proposal is number 1, we must understand what areas should we construct dams and what quality of dam, what are the provisions,
So are you
what are the
asking
requirements of the
for
engineer.
an inquiry?
We are not asking for the inquiry. What we are
Well,
saying is
what do
a
you
tragedy
want?
has happened and somebody must take responsibility.
Okay.
That
Well,
responsible person.
Eric, your
is the
point
owner
here
of the
before,
dam.
yeah.
Mike,
your
I
point
think,
is-
Nothing else.
I think this is very interesting conversation.
We cannot, we cannot lie to ourselves, Mark,
Yes.
that nothing has happened.
Yeah,
we cannot
because
lie to ourselves.
That is right.
we're
And
not-
that's why we're
If-
discussing it,
if,
Eric.
If you see an opposition party running to court when some of these things are not actually matters that can be pursued in court, actually they need political solutions, then you'll see there is a problem as a country. Having said that,
Yes.
I think as the media, we need to stick to the story and try to find out which parts of the story have not been told so that we are able to deal with this matter. We should also be able to continue asking for the report because the investigations are going on just to find out what are they saying about that. Because again, if you do not ask for maybe the findings of the team that is working on it, obviously they will also sleep on the job like others have slept on the job. So the media shouldn't drop this story. This story, I think, is still a story that needs to be pursued. Obviously, also there are other matters that have arisen, and we shouldn't drop this story so that we can pursue this other story. This story still need a lot of reporting because no amount of compensation can actually justify the loss of,
loss of the
human
folks.
life.
But do you feel that we should have told the wider story of, the rights of those people in Solai village that they were denied water from this particular farm from back in the day?
That is true.
Is this one story that we missed?
I think this is, yes, that's a story that we missed, and maybe we didn't miss it because I think when I was talking to our journalists who in Nakuru, actually they were able to point out that apparently this dam, they had blocked a stream
Yes.
that actually was supplying the villages there with water, and actually they diverted the water into the dam. So these are stories that have been there, and
Have they been reported?
they haven't been reported. So that's I'm saying that we still have a chance to report them.
To
because-
continuously
yeah, to-
follow
to-
this.
yes,
Really
follow-
quick.
And actually, just
Yes.
very quickly, we've got to recognize that this is not something that's simply unique to Solai. So we need to be looking around the country and asking where else does this situation pertain, where you've got private people essentially diverting a public resource, which is a river,
Yes.
to their own ends, to the detriment of
On that
other
point,
guys.
really quick, public resources being diverted for private gain. The government, as we put out on Nation Breaking News, the government opens relief line to help victims of Solai Dam tragedy. Public asked to send donation to the bill, the number that you see there, the M-Pesa number that you see there. And people said we didn't interrogate this further because we shouldn't be at this point where the government is appealing.
Right. I think, Mark, we should also give media credit because the media actually has done a very good job.
Yes.
Previously, I think I watched a story in one of the television stations here, and the story was interrogating if we have a disaster management team,
right,
and what are they doing. And that story was premised on the ongoing rains that actually are causing a lot of destruction across the country. And actually the media went ahead to ask, where are we prepared in the event that there is a disaster, a huge disaster, how do we react? And it's apparently that we are not prepared. You remember before, that was 2 or 3 years ago when there was, we had been warned we are going to have El Nino. And you can see how billions were assembled together and to respond. And then you see. So for us as a country, we usually react when things have happened. But I believe that we need also to, that's why I was expecting the opposition here to tell us that first of all, where is this disaster preparedness team? Where are they? How do we respond?
You know, Mark, when I expect people who are in the journalism profession to read a lot and to be the eye of the public. Anytime politicians post something, they should not only report it, but also ask why they are saying that.
Okay.
Now, this country, we have always said that we are always prepared. When the government officials speak, they say we are ready for that. They even fund that set aside. But when a disaster happens, then we are caught off guard. One of the things that we raised, Dr. Kuroko, the party leader, in his initial statement, he came from Dakar. One of the things that he raised, he said, how come today we are not talking about the floods that are causing havoc in this country? He mentioned 2 things. The other thing he mentioned was the lecturer strike that had gone over 60 days.
Yes.
We have been talking about this, and that's why we are saying there must be somebody responsible, even in disaster management. Who is responsible? It's not Kenyans who are responsible. There's somebody in charge. Right. That person that is in charge should give Kenyans the voice and tell them, listen, this is what we are doing. We have not had government coming out in full control and saying, this is what we are doing. We are evacuating. They have been accusing Red Cross. Actually, they have been telling Red Cross, do this, do this. But why would Kenyans contribute money only after disaster? When the government has always come out strong and say, we have put measures in place, this money is set aside for disaster management. Who is this person in charge of disaster management? What is he doing?
Right.
Or what is she doing? Where is he? Why are people dying? And he's there and she's
Are we
there.
being a bit too pessimistic, Gathara? I mean, this is just a call to the Kenyans' generosity. We come together in terms of disasters, and we can help.
No, I think what the government is asking us to do is to subsidize its incompetence. And to subsidize, actually, it's thieving. It's stealing. The fact is, if you look at the context within which they are calling for these funds, just last week, we learned that they're paying ex-presidents 95 million in retirement. You know, and that was an actual retirement package that was declared illegal by the courts. You know, and they appealed it, and it's been in abeyance for 2 years, just so they could keep paying 95 million shillings. And they're asking us to contribute. We contribute every day through our
Nothing
taxes.
wrong with contributing as well.
Yeah, but we contribute. There is, and that's what I'm trying to tell you.
Remember Kenyan for Kenya?
Let me finish.
Yes.
Let me finish. There is something wrong with contributing, especially contributing to government that you've already paid taxes to. You know, there's something wrong because what you're doing is you're giving them an excuse. You know, you're subsidizing their failures rather than insisting. No, we've already given you money. What the best thing we can do for the people in Solai and in other areas is to insist on accountability, because that is the only thing that in the end will force government to spend the money that we already give it, not on a few politicians, not on a few guys who steal it and put it in gunny bags, but on the people themselves. This is all our money.
Lastly on this, Eric, do you think is something worth pursuing, saying, okay, this much was raised from this particular appeal, just so that Kenyans know there was
That is why we nowadays also insist on what we call data journalism, where you go and look at these figures and just quantify. First of all, when the government is telling us to contribute, well, how much is the government targeting? Because we are expecting the government would have probably put aside some funds and say that, okay, given that we have an emergency, we put in maybe 100 million or 200 million just to help evacuate these families, have some form of shelter, food, but the government is asking Kenyans to contribute. The government is asking Red Cross to, as if we pay taxes to Red Cross. So that's something, there's something wrong. Because the government
there was
actually
1 billion given to Red Cross to support.
Yes.
Yeah,
exactly. So that's what we should expect from the government, other than appealing for the kind of the support the government is appealing for.
Okay. Yeah. All right. And it's not moving on from this story, but we have to take a break and then come back with a discussion still on issues of management of public funds, and that is specifically with this story on NYS that was broken by the Sunday Nation. Stay with Presspass. Welcome back to Presspass. The conversation now continues and has been continuing over the break. Excuse me. And now we'll be getting into the big story. That is the NYS story that broke over the weekend. But just some feedback as you've been following the conversation on the previous discussion. Lazuj says that third guy alliance guy should get a life. I don't know why. I don't know what you said. Minor boy, you say. Like Gathara says, we must reimagine the state. As you followed this conversation, Davy KN, you say some years back there was a dam failure in Joro, Nakuru County. The story never received media coverage. There were no fatalities to report. Is that probably why it wasn't covered? In 2018, Solai Dam tragedy happens and we act haphazardly as if this is a new incident. Very good point there by Davy. And another one in, following up what he says, mud or more precisely earthen dams are perfectly fine so long as the correct factor of safety is applied. The dam designer is always privy to such factors, and these days there are manuals on the same. And yes, Mainawa boy, again, you say we can't keep allowing people to get away with stealing 10 billion and then asking Kenyans to contribute when disasters strike. Inching into the next conversation here, Jacob Abere Matlala, you say Solai Dam is waking up case study. Let us not blame Patel knowingly. It has been there 20 years. Now let geo-weather inspectors go around either public or private water pans and be having it statutes, I believe you mean to say. Be giving it statutes, I believe is what I should have read. Thank you for that. And Eric Kimathi, you say, why should Kenyans be given a pay bill number to contribute towards a disaster victims when 10 billion just finds a way to run away with without anyone noticing? I am disappointed. Hey, my English today is out of the window. Eric Kimathi brings us to the second point and focus of our show tonight. And it is now emerging that recommendations by the EACC to seal loopholes used to steal public funds at the NYS were never adopted. I'm talking about the previous scandal, the 790 million shilling scandal. Now, the failure to seal the loopholes may directly be responsible for execution of the latest scam that may have cost the taxpayer up to 9 billion shillings, as Enoch Sikolia found out.
Details about the new scam at the National Youth Service are emerging. And with it, shockwaves that changes in the relevant ministry and the institution could be doing so little to curb theft of public money. In 2015, reeling from the 791 million shillings NYS scandal, President Uhuru Kenyatta made changes to his cabinet, with Cecily Kariuki taking over the Ministry of Public Service, Gender and Youth Affairs. She was to stem the dragon that is corruption in the NYS, which had reduced the institution to a money-minting machine. But the more things appear to change, the more they remained same. Under her watch, new details indicate that corrupt NYS officials set up dummy companies, forged procurement documents, and exploited loopholes in the system to steal billions from the taxpayer. In a fraud that ropes in top government officials, payments of more than 9 billion shillings was authorized and executed in 2016 in favor of fictitious companies supplying nothing. The multi-agency team, comprising of the EACC, the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions, the DCI, and the National Intelligence Service, have closed down on 36 companies which have supplied NYS with various goods. The new details emerging even as President Uhuru Kenyatta committed to fighting graft in his legacy term.
This is not a blame game. We're not here for blame game. We're here to achieve something.
It is emerging that EACC started probing the running of affairs at the institution in September last year after it became apparent recommendations the anti-graft body made on how to seal corruption loopholes were not being implemented. The 2015 recommendations were made after it became clear that Kenyans had lost more than 791 million shillings to corrupt government officials and anti-graft agencies were only chasing ghosts. As per the report, NYS was awarding contracts to bidders quoting the highest prices and undertaking services that were not planned. The EACC report added that in 2013-2014 fiscal year, prices for various items had been overstated compared to the market price index issued by the Public Procurement Oversight Authority in October 2013. The document showed amounts in millions as having been overpriced. Enoxikolia, NTV.
And you're definitely going to hear more on this story from our team. It was a story that was broken by the Sunday Nation and will be picked up by many other media houses. And this is where we ask now, moving forward, what will give value to the story and what should we be ignoring? Of course, there will be the contention, excuse me, my voice is also going, there will be contention of the figure. And already the PS has said that it is not the 10 billion. In fact, some were saying it's 9 billion, 10 billion. It's 121 million shillings that is in question on this particular issue. And in fact, she, along with Health CS Karaoke and the NYS boss in Dubai, will be questioned by MPs on Monday on this particular issue. So, first of all, is it about the figures, getting the figure right? And I mean, we broke the story, that's right. But moving on, what should be our focus?
I think we should still continue to pursue the issue of the figures. We cannot afford to drop the issue of the figures. We need to know how much actually was lost, even if it's 10 shillings. We should pursue that. Yes. Then number two, we also need to find out, and who are these people? You know, we need to profile them. We need to profile the companies because it has come a norm in this country that people like to exploit weak structures in our organizations. Mm-hmm. We have entrepreneurs here who are always looking at the available opportunities, how they can siphon money out of the public coffers. Because, like we've said, that the recommendations that were made by EACC, they were never taken into consideration. Was that deliberate, or probably as a result of bureaucracy in the government? Because if you increase the budget of an organization from 5 billion to 25 billion, then you do not improve on the internal processes, you do not strengthen the structures of that organization. It means that it was deliberate. And we are saying this because just the other day, a few months ago, we got money from Eurobond. Yes. So very soon we'll be talking about again going for Eurobond 3 because the money has come in, but it has not actually been used properly on the project that it was intended. So there are a lot of questions that the media should continue digging in so that we can able to hold the government to account and ensure that we give the public appropriate and accurate information. Right.
And earlier, one of my colleagues joked and quipped we should be actually tagging this as NYS Season 2. Yeah. Do you feel this is a second opportunity to get the story right? Because it's happened almost in the same exact way. IFMIS was exploited.
Yeah, I think it's an opportunity for the media to get it right. And I agree with my colleague here. It's not about the figures. Even if it was 1 shilling, that is public money. In fact, when the president, during his State of the Nation address, talked about fighting corruption, the first thing that we thought he would do is to declare corruption, what they call corruption. We don't call it corruption because we call it theft of public money, a national disaster. That is the start of fighting corruption. You have to declare it a national disaster. One of the things that has happened in this country when we report cases of theft of public money, and even when they go to court, the Auditor General report has never been used as the first piece of evidence. Auditor General report is a qualified opinion, constitutionally mandated, Article 229. This report, you can never doubt it, because that is his job, or that is our job. So what we have always advised the executive, as opposition party again, we have said, let the court use the Auditor General report as the first piece of evidence. Let them use the Auditor General and the expert witness, because he has the information. These cases, remember last year, the last theft at NYS, 23 people were acquitted because of lack of evidence.
This was just last month.
While the
March.
Auditor General report has got the facts. Why didn't we use them? The other thing we have said, the DPP, why do we delay some of these cases for long in court dragging? We have recommended that let them take maximum 60 days, and even investigations, let them take less than 30 days, so that we fast track these processes.
Some might say that wouldn't be thorough. I mean, give it time, be thorough in investigations, not just for the heck of pleasing people that you
It's not about pleasing people,
yes.
But again, we also know that if the Auditor General report publishes that report and has cited and explained expenditure, has cited some of the companies that were used. Today we are seeing one of the public payees has got 3 names, registered 3 companies. Why are we not questioning? Is that rocket science? It is not. What we are saying, let us implement the Constitution fully. We respect the rule of law.
Yes.
If the Auditor General report is, the Auditor General office is mandated, let us use that information to the benefit of the Kenyan public by fighting corruption. Talk about fighting corruption without action is nothing. In fact, the president said that he would want to invite the public also to help him. The public are ready. But what are we doing about the institutions that have been mandated to fight corruption?
Yes.
EACC, ethics and
They would
corruption.
argue they're actually doing
All
their
that.
job. In fact, first of all, this is something to interrogate and be serious about. This seems like information that got to the
Came
newsroom
from the
through
whatever.
NYS and the ODPP and the DCI.
Yes, I mean, that's true. I wouldn't say they are fully doing their job, but this seems to be something that they are actively investigating. And this is a report on an investigation that's ongoing.
Yes.
So in a sense that they are alive to this. But I have a few problems with what he has said. First, government cannot tell the courts what evidence or what evidence not to use. Government cannot even direct the ODPP on how to prosecute cases. There's very good reasons why we have that barrier, and it's surprising to me that a party that stands up and says that it wants to be in government or it's a government in waiting is willing to blur these lines. These are really, really important lines.
Yeah.
These are protections for all of us, and stuff. Secondly, if you to take even the Auditor General's reports, lots of those are audit queries, and I'm sure by now people understand what audit queries are, from all the discussions we've had before. They are not necessarily proof of wrongdoing. That has to be proven by other competent authorities that take it. It's not the courts, actually the ODPP prosecutes, and then has to prove his case to the courts, So I think you need to make those distinctions. But when it comes to the reporting, our media is very good at reporting and telling you what is happening when it's happening. Unfortunately, they are always reporting in the present, so that
But
once
how it was broken, it is
right.
okay
I mean,
to
that's what I'm
react
saying. So
right now.
so now it's hot news. It's breaking,
Yes.
and you will tell us this is what they say. ETCs are the companies.
get reactions and
Right. Exactly. But what really for me matters is interrogating the systems, and that's actually a much deeper investigation or much deeper commitment to telling better stories. So if you think about it, we are in Kenya have a focus on prosecutions, and pretty much, in fact, even from the statement they gave out, that seems to be where the focus is.
You want someone to be held responsible.
Let's hold somebody to account, and I'm all for that.
Yes.
I keep shouting every day, let's hold government and people to account. But doing that is not sufficient. Because even if we were to grab everybody who was in NYS today, or who participated in this scam and jail them, my question would be, have we fixed the problem? We, as you mentioned, there were 26 people who were being prosecuted for the last scam. But that wasn't sufficient. What's important is we look is, how did that money actually get stolen? What were the problems in the system? And for as long as we are not addressing those, we'll just be waiting for the next scam and then hoping we will grab them and prosecute them. And the same thing when you think about it with the proposals on Solai. The idea that let's go and prosecute the guys in charge and that is sufficient. No, it's not. It's good and it's fantastic and it is necessary to prosecute people and to hold them to account. But we need to go beyond that and to ask, what are the systemic failures and fix those failures.
And in the latest report, I think the one that we played, it showed there that EACC points out recommendations it had made from the previous scandal were not put in place or implemented.
These were recommendations made in 2015.
Yes.
Our stories in the media were about the prosecutions.
Yes.
So if we had followed up in the last 3 years, asking, have those things being implemented? That is the story we should have stuck with.
Yeah,
because,
Mark,
and that's my problem.
I think the issue here is that we always go for individuals, like Gathara is saying that we go for individuals. Then we lose focus on some of the structural problems or weaknesses we have in these institutions. Like EACC had already recommended that do ABCD so that you can seal these loopholes. But it seems people forget about that. We go for the individuals. So the story is personalized. We are looking at the individuals. The Director General of NYS has been sacked. Someone else has been brought in. Waiguru has asked for time to go and get some light duties, you see. But we forget about the real issues that actually expose the taxpayers to lose such kind of money. So I believe that as much as we also go for the individuals, we must also continue to interrogate the systems of this organization so that we see if those loopholes can be sealed so that the public actually does not lose money.
Yes.
Number two, I will also expect now the opposition and the civil society also to work with the media so that we can be able to see how do we get more information, because again it's all about getting information, because the media also needs to get this information from elsewhere. So it means that at this particular time also sharing information is also very key so that the media can able to highlight some of these things.
And I want to, on that particular point on information and where we get it from, and I kind of hinted at it but we didn't quite address it. Nothing wrong with having information from the NYS, nothing wrong from having information from ODPP and the DCI. We have mandated them with giving us this information, but should there also be some skepticism that is in handling this information that we get from them?
Exactly. As a journalist, when you get this information or if you mine this information from somewhere else, it's upon you now to verify and vet this information. You don't just use it as gospel truth, because again, like in such matter, you'll realize that probably there are some wars of tender who lost and who did not get, and who has not been paid and who has been paid. So the journalist must also treat this information with some caution. You verify the information before you use. But again, also, journalists must also be cautious, because again, the corruption can also hit back. So the journalists also must also pursue these matters because they are very sensitive. If you're talking about 10 billion, you mean somebody will hit back, because they will not be happy with what journalists are doing. So also journalists must also be wary of their safety and their protection, so that when they're handling this story again, they do not expose themselves
and also
to
not
those
accept
dangers.
to be silenced.
Exactly. Also don't, exactly. Also don't accept. There are various ways to silence journalists.
Okango, from your point of view, are you content that some of these institutions are actually giving this information? The NIS, the ODPP, the DCI. From your position as a third way alliance, are you content that work is being done to fight corruption?
We are not content. The reason why we are not content is because, you cannot believe entirely on what those institutions are giving the media, while the same institutions have failed, even in their systemic procedures. They have failed. We are here talking about the structures that he mentioned. We are talking about what are the real issues, IFMIS. What do we do about IFMIS so that we seal the loopholes? Those are systemic failures. But even in the institutions, we still have systemic failures. In the judiciary, we have systemic failures. What we are saying is, we cannot be theorists. We are full of theory. And that's why I would want to tell Gathara, we must now start acting. Too much talk is not helping. If we realize that the government cannot report itself, he said the government cannot interrogate itself. I agree with you. I agree with you. Who is the public eye? The media. He said it. And the public should also know that their participation in matters of how they are governed is very important. The articles, there's so many articles in the Constitution that talks about public participation, from 10, 186, and so on. All those articles require the public to participate in how they are governed.
Yes.
Number one, if you whistle blow, are you protected? Number two, when you whistle blow, is there an institution that is going to take action? The media must now come out strong. When this thing happened, one of the officials, government officials said, no, it is not 10 billion, it is 123, only 13 vouchers were affected. The same official in that institution said, no, it is 10. Who do we believe? As a media, what are you going to report? You'll report 10 billion for sensational purposes. But again, you're saying, okay, anyway, there's another 123. That is not the fact. The fact is money has been stolen. So for me, the advice I would also give to the media, while you're going to engage the public like us in this, let us also interrogate the systems of the institutions that have been mandated to prosecute, the system of issues that have been mandated to whistleblow, like the civil society and so forth. Everyone has a price. In a country where corruption is like a cockcrow, they can pay money to even the journalists, to the civil society and so on, to stop this thing. We know that.
Yes.
But one fact remains: the rule of law and the Constitution must be adhered to, and that is what we are pushing for.
Okay, and you'll tell us the challenge
There's
that you...
there's something I would want to say about that.
About what exactly?
I would expect that if the issues of the rule of law and the cases are led to the courts to do that, because we have judiciary that is competent to do that, we'll expect opposition parties also to play their role in terms of galvanizing the country so that you can have that pressure and insert pressure, because that is what we expect from political parties and pressure group. You put pressure on the government so the government is able to act on these issues. Otherwise, if you want to take this war to fight a political war in a court of law, I don't think if you are going to help this country. But we want to see an opposition that is likely and ready to lead Kenyans to put pressure on the government so the government can address some of these things. Because
Gathara, someone is asking here, because you made your point, Eric, sorry to cut you short.
Yes.
Sir Jeremy asks, what systemic issues does Gathara mean? We have standards set for these, but people in charge neglect.
No, I mean, the story in that you just read says that the EACC recommends certain changes to how we conduct public finances. And this was from their lessons from the stealing 2014-2015. Then in 2018, we learned that since 2016, they've been utilizing the very same things they did in 2014 to steal more money. Even more actually than they did. This is what, about 5 times more,
yes,
they stole before. That is a systemic failure. So yes, there is criminal culpability. I'm not saying that there isn't. And I'm saying that it is necessary to hold those people to account, for that, get them, put them in jail, But that in itself won't fix the systemic issue, won't fix why IFMIS is so prone to being abused. We've got to fix IFMIS itself, which means then we've got to understand why it is people can register dummy companies. If you remember in the PAC, I think it was in October of 2016, even then CS Waiguru was linked to 4 dummy companies. That's what they used to essentially extract money out of NYS. It's the same scam they're running today. So if we don't fix that, if we don't look at IFMIS, if we don't understand why you can register a company called Miss Things of Desire and get money out of NYS, for as long as we don't ask those questions, we don't actually delve into how the public system works, public finance system works, and understand where the gaps are, and then demand that those gaps be fixed. Now, I'll say something about the role of the opposition in this, and I agree, yes, mobilize people for this. But, you know, I would think that people who stand up and they say we are a government in waiting should be the guys who are saying this is how we would solve the problem if we were in government, you know. And that's not what that's what I'm not hearing, you know. So I think that in as much as I will hold government to account that it is their job to fix things, the people who are asking me to support them to be the next government, because that's what opposition is, you know, then I'll ask them the same question. What would you do? You know, what are your ideas? You said your ideas don't die at election time, after the election. What are they now?
Express yourself.
I have said it before. We are not theorists, and we don't believe in theory. We believe in practicality.
Ideas.
We have recommended and we have advised the executive, especially on matters theft of public money. We have said before, the first piece of evidence that should be used is Auditor General report. Gathara, that is an option. Number two, we have said the Auditor General, the DPP should not drag these cases. They should be fast-tracked. In fact, we recommended that 60 days on matters of theft of public money, and even investigation should take less than 30 days. The other thing we
How
said,
would you do that?
the people that have been convicted, not only conviction, but also the loot should be recovered and also pay extra 10%. Today I was very glad when I saw one of the officers who had acquired public property worth 3.8 million and was fined 16.8 million. That is the way to go. That is what we are saying. The other thing we also said, in the event that the investigators collaborate or do a conspiracy with the people like NYS and the ACC, these people also should be charged. That is what we are saying. Those are options, Gathara. We are not theorists. If you don't listen to that, then
To be quite honest, this makes very little sense. If you're saying,
Gathara, it's not about what you think.
finish.
It's about what will help this country.
I gave you your time.
Okay, respond, then
You know,
Eric needs to
you
jump in.
said we want 30 days. Within 30 days, investigations are complete. You know, or prosecutions are complete.
Chief.
Well, you have to then tell us. All right, how do we get to this situation? You know we've got courts, we've got them actually overwhelmed with cases, you know. And my question is then, how do you come up and say, all right, we will only give you so long, you know?
But you see, Gathara,
How does it work?
Gathara,
You know,
look at
are you
this.
proposing changes to law? What changes are this?
No, let-
Just
Are
1
you
minute.
you know, what is it that you're
Gathara
proposing?
is
Tell
a member
me.
of the public. Gathara is not aware that the Constitution allows him to participate publicly. That's what he doesn't
That's
know.
what I'm doing
So maybe
here.
Gathara
Yes.
should
This
participate.
is what
But
I'm
the other
doing
thing you are doing, you're telling people theory. What are you doing? You're telling us
I'm
theory.
telling you, think
Eric,
what you're
Eric,
proposing.
Eric, jump in.
You know, I'm amazed that the opposition is advising the government, is making recommendations to the government.
Yes, that is the job.
The government does not take advice from the opposition. Opposition actually is supposed to provide alternative leadership, and I think that is how it's supposed to be.
And that's what
By
we are doing.
Not advising the government how the government is going to carry out
The
investigation.
opposition
Let me
must
just
offer alternative
Yes.
solutions to any issue that
You've
is
made
about
it.
the
Now
government.
moving
That's
to the
what
point
we
that you wanted
have
to
done.
bring
Not
in,
about
Eric.
theories. Coming
What
from against theories.
I wanted to say is
let
that
Eric-
as
let
the
Eric
media,
clarify.
I believe that we still need a lot of information, and I think that's again, if you look at even the previous scandals, how they have unfolded, opposition actually plays a key role, because opposition is able now to provide that kind of information that the media is supposed to use, so that action is taken, other than making these recommendations that action do not help at all. So I believe that journalists will not lose focus again on this story. We will stay on it, because I think that has always been our major problem here in this country, that we have a story maybe 1 or 2 days, then we drop it, then we jump to something else. So we'll expect that we are going to pursue this story and other stories. Maybe there may be other things also cooking elsewhere. So the journalists, we need to focus more on investigative journalism, so that we are able to unearth most of all these things, but we pursue them up to the conclusion.
And you're right in terms of investigative journalism.
Before we take a break.
I mean, lots of our investigative desks in our main newsrooms, I mean, have really been cut down, you know, and that's a really worrisome affair. But I'll just say one thing from what he said. Please, let's not demonize theory. Theory is important. It's what allows us to think through our problems. Just saying let us act is what leads us to saying let's prioritize a prosecution and not fix a system. the theory is important. Let us think through our problems. That is how we will solve them. You know, don't dismiss that and take the time. Here's my suggestion. You know, you don't have to agree with me now, but take the time to think through how what you propose can be effected. And then come and tell us as Kenyans that, look, if I was in charge, I would change law A. I would pass this policy. I would do this, and this would be the result. Don't just say, let us cut things down by 30 days. You know, because then there are other implications you're not thinking about because you're not concerned with the theory, you're not concerned with the thinking. It is important. Think through them.
Gentlemen, I need to leave you with this thought before we take a break for the last part. Karoki Williams says, so how does it help to talk about corruption anyway? Kenyans love new malls, new apartments, fat cars, fat politicians. Kindly let them steal in peace. Some thought as we take a break on this issue. Some people think we run our mouths too much when we're talking about this issue called corruption. We'll be back with the last part of the show. Stay with us. Welcome back to the last part of Presspass. And on Wednesday, the president talked strongly against corruption, saying the vice has the potential to both undermine his Big Four agenda and completely destroy the country. The head of state spoke at the 8th Presidential Roundtable Forum at State House, and this is part of what he had to say.
This is not a blame game. We're not here for blame game. We're here to achieve something. Government needs to do its part, but private sector also needs to do their part. Isn't that the way? Huh?
Yes, sir.
And since the whole of government is here, and I believe now that the manufacturing sector is also here, amongst other sectors, let's finish this. Yeah? And we set ourselves targets. Everybody sets themselves targets.
And we got quite some flack for playing this, and some even asking us, don't you ever get tired for, you know, regurgitating and throwing the same thing over and over again? This is just empty talk. But you're not convinced when you hear the president speak like this against corruption?
No, I'm not. I mean, the proof of the pudding is in the eating. You know, it's what have they actually done. The second thing for me, I mean, just declarations of commitment or whatever are meaningless. We've had them from, you know, when his father was president and Moi and Kibaki. You know, it's all, everybody's committed to zero tolerance for corruption, but corruption still goes on. You know, the other thing is, and that I really took exception to in that statement, was this idea that the blame game is something wrong. It is wrong within their circles, but we need to hold them to account, and that means we need to blame the people who are responsible. You know, we need to point fingers.
Yes.
They like to tell us, oh, let's not blame people. Let's, you know, no, let's blame them. You know, let's hold them to account, and then let's fix the system. You know, but it's not the I mean, we can walk and chew gum. It's not the case that if we prosecute people, we can't fix problems. Or that for us to fix problems, we've got to ignore the people who messed up. No, we can do both. So prosecute the people in charge, you know, hold them to account, but also let's demand that the systems that allow this malfeasance to happen get fixed.
Yeah, and it said that by the time he was making this pronouncement against corruption and the zero tolerance for his government, he'd actually known or gotten reports of what's happening at the NYS. Are you convinced from your perspective that he has zero tolerance?
You see, Mark, I've faulted President Kenyatta on his State of the Nation address, and our party have done that before. Even when he was making that statement, while he congratulated the 11th Parliament for having done a good job, it's the same parliament that failed him in fighting corruption. So corruption is not an instant thing that just happened today. Corruption in Kenya are systematic, they are planned. Yes. Some of these things we're talking about here, these guys schemed. Look at the issues at NYS. They're the same, some of them are the same companies that were mentioned in what we call NYS Season 1, you know? What we are saying is, the president as the head of state, the president as the chief, commander-in-chief, the president as the person who is leading this country, should also be aware that the systems that have been put in place, if they are not strengthened, then they can also not fight corruption. Even if today the whistleblowers go and text him on his cell phone, we will not fight it. It requires the political goodwill, it requires public participation, it requires the media. Fighting corruption, theft of public money requires everyone today. So the blame game, while can be there, but you're also saying, who are we pointing the arrow? The arrow is pointing at who? If today the arrow is pointing at the hitter should bear the greatest responsibility. And the president should stand up and say, I am going to fire the DPP for failing to do 1, 2, 3. I am going to fire the NYS boss for failing to do 1, 2, 3. I am going to fire the CS of whatever department for failing to do 1, 2, 3. That way, action should have been taken. Then, let us also go back and look at how did we arrive at this money being stolen? What was the loophole? Fix it.
Yes.
Fix it. That way we'll fight corruption.
Okay.
And
Eric,
I'll say this, that if you look at the paper that I work for, the East African, and we've done these stories, if we had a similar problem in probably in Rwanda, and I think a story we've done in Rwanda, in Tanzania, and you look at how the leadership in those countries actually they handle such matters, assuming that this money actually was stolen or maybe was lost in an organization in Rwanda, you can guess that action that will be taken. People will take responsibility, beginning from the ministers up to the director generals. So I think that's what we would want to see here in Kenya, whereby President Kenyatta asks people now to account for some of it or take responsibility for what is happening. Because again, it wouldn't just be reading statements and issuing warnings. And sometimes, remember last year when we were at the State House, when he said that, sasa mtaka nifanye nini? And I believe that if you start holding people to account individually, and I think some people will fear, because again, like our viewer who has said that this is the story we talk about every day we talk about it, but nothing happens, because these people also know that they collude with the officers in these organizations to siphon money, but nothing will happen. So we would want to see where the president now is taking the lead and telling people that, hey, boss, you must be held to account for all this, and action is taken.
I want to bring something to your attention as we get to concluding on this issue, because we need to wrap up. Maina Wambui, he's writing and saying, journalists must find the faces behind these companies involved in the NYS scandal and profile them. We need to put their faces everywhere that they will not hide. They will have nowhere to hide, he's saying. But is it that easy? That's a pressure that will come now to us. Give us the names. But is it that easy because we have the issue of litigation?
I said that before, that some of the things that maybe the media or journalists need to look at is profiles of these companies and individuals who are behind it. But anybody who has been in this country, you know that even if you go to the Register of Companies or Register of Society to just try to look for this information, some people actually, you'll never get to know the real identity of the directors of these companies. Yes. So then, number two, you also find yourself running at the risk of also being sued because of defamation. Again, is also there, so you must also be very careful. So sometimes putting names to these faces becomes very difficult. Remember when there was a story about land, when people went there to look at the directors of the company and the names that you got there, you see. So you'll realize that sometimes the media will have that motivation to go out there and look for that information and put faces to these names. But you'll be frustrated because you might not even get those files sometimes for the first time, even if you go to Sharia House just trying to look for that information. Sometimes you don't find that file. So as much as that's what I believe we are going to do, because I've seen there's a lot of zeal in this work of investigative journalism. But now sometimes you might have that, you want to get that information but don't get it. But what I can promise the public that yes, that is something that I think journalists should look at.
And you'll see this manifest in the way the story was told. This is the headlining story on today's Daily Nation. Faces and the phony firms behind the 9 billion looting spree at NYS. And in one of the paragraphs here, it says also being investigated at Calabash Investments, Anwar Investments, Ark Road Holdings, and many others. And in the next paragraph, they're careful to say, while the nation is not alleging wrongdoing on the part of these entities, the Directorate of Criminal Investigations has been digging into whether the law was followed in the...
These are just proxies that are being used. But now if you go deep, we need to find out, yes, these are the directors who have been registered under this company. but there could be some other bigger
Yeah, we
names.
saw it on season 1.
Exactly. So we also like it also to see this one also happening. So so you could go for these individuals knowing very well that maybe these are the directors of this company. But again, if you do a lot of more investigations, you'll find that maybe there are other bigger names that actually these are just people who have just been fronted for the purposes of hiding the identities of the real beneficiaries of these billions of shillings.
Yeah,
Yes.
I think that it's I mean, I totally appreciate that there are limitations and legal problems that or challenges that the newspapers have to take into account when doing their reporting, you know. But that just, for me, really emphasizes the need for the what's being reported to be grounded ever more in fact, in verifiable fact, you know. I think that's part of why I'm sure this wasn't a case where some guy turned up with, you know, a piece of paper from ODPP saying this and this, and you reported it. You know, that there was a way, a form or an attempt to verify what you were being told. You know, and I hope to contact the companies that were being, let's say, impugned, you know, and get comments from them. You know, what do they say? So what's their side of the story, so that you get a rounded out a picture. And I think that's just the basic, the essence of good fundamental reporting.
And pursuing this further.
It's not easy. It takes resources. It takes time, you know. And I think we shouldn't be in a rush, you know. And this is, for me, what really sometimes I think might be problematic. We're in a rush to sort of get the scoop, you know, rather than do the work. And I think that there's low-hanging fruit, which is, you know, we can focus it on these companies and who owns them, etc. That's important. But that's just low-hanging fruit. The real story should be how the system itself works.
Yes.
And what are the gaps, because that's what needs fixing.
Okay.
You know, and I think if we were to go even beyond that, we really need to look at how our state works and how the structures we have within the state, which is basically a colonial state that we have, that how they incentivize corruption. You know, and that we start understanding that we cannot fix corruption without fixing the state.
Yes. And there's an interesting approach Third Way Alliance has to this, and you are approaching or have approached the Auditor General to give figures to, you know, corroborate what is being reported?
Yes, yes. You see, Mark, as I said earlier, the report from the Auditor General is a qualified report. That's an opinion that you cannot dispute. And that is constitutional mandate. Yes. That's what they do. Now, if we can use these reports and even share it with the public, because the public has got a right to information. They have a right to information. The Constitution allows them that. Yes. This information can now help the media also to do factual reporting. What the media fears a lot of time is they'll be sued, they'll be shut down. And I think the media is protected under our Constitution. Yes. The other thing the media fear is that some of these people will go to the individual journalists. We have had cases where the journalists are being told, unataka kufutwa kazi. We have had those things. But we would urge the media, as politicians, we would urge the media, you are protected by the Constitution. And report the facts. And also don't tire. Because you see, today the media reports this as a sensational story, and then they later realize that, you know, it was not 10 billion, it was 123 million. Then you are forced to apologize. And because the media cannot apologize, they now do a cover-up. You know, those are the things that...
We do retract.
Mark, I can tell you, we have seen instances where the media has blundered and they have refused to apologize. But that's not the case. The case here is, we would want to see a media that is steadfast. If we stick to our guns and say, these are the faces behind the 10 billion theft. They put their faces there. Publish it. Even if you're going to do it 10 times, let the public know. The other thing, collaborate. Because if today NYS and DCI refuse to give you the facts, what are you going to do? You'll have to work from yourself. Do investigative journalism. Report those figures. If it did not come from ethics and anti-corruption, NIS, or any government official, it doesn't mean that it's not valid. It doesn't mean. It means that you went out of your way and did a reporting.
need to verify
That-
it, obviously.
the verification can come, but we also say that what are the chances that you will shy away because you have been threatened? That is what the public don't want to hear. So we urge the public.
They're in agreement. That I agree.
And this is now concluding remarks.
I would say this. I don't think if there is any incident where the media has shied away from exposing these evils in our society, including corruption.
KDF.
I know that the media has always gone. What I would say is that sometimes the expectation maybe is too high from the members of the public, to the extent that maybe the media could be right, but now that that information actually doesn't favor you, that's when you now start questioning the authenticity of that story and if the story was really well researched.
Yeah.
What I know is that journalists actually go out of their way to tell the stories and use the information that they verify, and before they publish a story, they always make sure that actually the story has gone through several quality checks to ensure that the public actually is given accurate and good stories.
Yeah,
And let them also not steal it from within.
What's the
if I
story
may say
here
one thing.
from this week moving on, before we even have these officials from those ones who've been named from the CS Sicily and the PS as well? They will face the members of parliament, they'll face the legislators, and that will be the next big part to really move the story forward. But in this week, is IFMIS something you want to hear?
Yes, I want to hear much more about IFMIS, about what are the specific failures within IFMIS that led to this. I think we really need to drill down on that and to sort of not to use jargon on explaining it to people, let your readers actually understand this is how the system works, and you can do that in plain language, so it's easily understandable.
Yes.
And then we start focusing on how do we fix those? What are the ideas? What did the EACC say? The proposals that we are saying were not implemented. What were they? And then what's then the plan for implementing them? And to follow up on that, what's required? Is legislation required? Or is this a case where you need regulations to be put out by the minister in charge or whatever? What exactly is it? And then we articulate that, and we now start putting pressure on those loopholes to be fixed. And we do this alongside keeping an eye on the people who've been accused, and ensuring that the people who are in charge are held to account, because it goes beyond just the people who are named here, but to the people who should have stopped it.
Is there any value? Is there any value as you give your last comments? We're really out of time. Is there any value revisiting the previous?
There is,
because the last report I believe in this regard was 23 of those who were named were acquitted. That was in March.
And that's the thing is,
it was
let's
laid to
follow up. Prosecution is also part of a system. It all works towards our systems of accountability. So let's look at that. Why is it this happened?
But you see, Mark, most of these cases.
If I may, I think that we need to understand that when it comes to fighting corruption, there are several things that we need to be doing. And the media's role in this is to keep reminding us about those things. So if 26 guys, if the ODPP took a case to court and he lost it, it could be because the person was innocent, which is fine. Or it could be that the ODPP took forward a flawed case. We've had cases like this, and I think it's the media to start going through that and start explaining this is why this was thrown out. So then we can see where the errors are, where are the problems, and then we can fix that.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to say, that if you look at most of these cases, when they collapse from just from the point where the investigations begin, and that's where I would expect now even the opposition now to have an eye on what is happening even from the investigations, because most of our cases actually they collapse because of poor investigations and sometimes interference with the documents and altering information that is there. So that is why we would expect the civil society and the opposition, even the media.
Well, Eric, I think we really have to make the provision to make the point that just because somebody is accused of something doesn't mean they're guilty.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, that even at the time when someone has been accused, but at least at that point you need now to keep an eye on what is happening from the investigations.
There's something interesting at this time, that the opposition as we have known it is now, working hand in hand with the government, one would say, after the handshake.
Yeah,
So, and it was interesting how previously when NYS season 1, if we call it that, when it happened, then of course the opposition would jump onto this case and say, in fact, this is what we know, giving you more information. So it's a different environment.
That's what I wanted to say. That how I wish right now I was a leader of any political party in this country, because that is now when you prove to Kenyans that indeed you are a leader and the Kenyans can trust you with the leadership of this country.
I believe Edwin Sifuna says that they will be pushing and holding the government to account, and that's the NYS.
I don't think at any given time ODM can now come out strong and say money has been stolen. I don't think so. Now, what we have done, we have given our statement and we have given action plan on what we're going to do on this. And I can assure Kenyans, starting tomorrow, we shall follow through. We have also recommended that some of these people, let us initiate bankruptcy proceedings against them. Because if you have been mentioned in season 1, season 2, season or whatever, we must now act accordingly. Number 3, we have also said, if in any case a judge has dismissed a case because of lack of evidence, then that judge also should also should also give reasons as to why that happened. The media should pick that.
It's called a judgment force.
The media should also pick that and publish in the local dailies. The judiciary should publish in their websites, even monthly, on the update on these cases. Yes. The media also should do the same.
KenyaLaw.org.
But what we are saying is we should run away from theory like the ones given by Gathara every now and again, and go for the action, because that does not help this country. Kenyans must now actively participate, because theory is not working. Coming to the media and speaking too much does not help us.
So you term yourself now the official opposition?
We are the official opposition, and we can say it without flinching.
This official opposition,
your last word, and then Eric, your last word.
I think the official opposition needs to be told a few facts. Number 1, judges do explain the reasons why they dismiss cases. It's in their judgment. Right. They do put them up on the website. It's you can go to KenyaLaw.org. Judgments are there. The president cannot fire the director of public prosecutions, as you had suggested. There is a system in the Constitution for getting rid of it.
Right.
The Auditor General report is public. You can get it.
You have not
Go
read
and
it
check
yourself.
it.
Read it.
It can be questioned. It has been questioned many times.
Auditor General report is a qualified opinion.
It is a qualified.
He is lying to us. Don't lie to Kenyans. It is constitutional. It cannot be questioned. It is a qualified opinion.
All right, and then your other point?
Who questions the Auditor General report?
My final point is this. On the issue of the official opposition or whatever. First, there is no such designation in our laws. It doesn't exist. And for me, it matters less what somebody is called rather than what he does. If Third Way wants to act as a party that is holding, that's standing in the space of the opposition, then let them act that way. And I would say that goes simply beyond, coming here and asking the same questions I ask. It's fine. They can do that, but they also, because they are standing in the space of saying we are a government in waiting, they should be telling me that we want to be in power because this is how we would solve the problem.
And I'm sure he'll say that's what they've done. All right. Eric, concluding, East African readers will definitely want to hear more about this. What will you be pursuing, even before they start answering questions?
Basically, you see, for our readers, like the East African, they always want to be given more information. So basically, for us, if you are approaching this story, we definitely, first of all, we must give figures. We must find out how much exactly has been lost, and where was this money coming from, and also interrogate the systems of NYS and try to look at similar organizations. Could it be that only NYS that were able to lose money from NYS, or we are also losing money through other parastatal or other organizations within the country? Then from there we'll be able to find out the systemic failures we're talking about. Can they be fixed? Then we'll put these hard questions to someone else or maybe for the Treasury to explain to us how come that this IFMIS is very easy to manipulate so that money can be, you can get rid of it. You will expect that an organization like NYS that has had similar scandal 3 years ago would right now will be very careful when they are dealing with their procurement processes. They'll actually make it even difficult because they have suffered before. Yes. But you'll see, you'll realize that yes, it has happened again. So it means that the actions that they ought to have taken were not put into consideration. So we will be going more just to find out, and where this money coming from? Could it be maybe the 250 billion we got from Eurobond that we are careless with it? Because by the end of the day, you'll be asking Kenyans that, where did this money go to? Then we'll also need to find out if this maybe now the 250 billion that we just borrowed the other day is what we are now actually people are stealing.
Right.
You know, people
really
must
quick,
get those answers.
Very quick.
Yeah.
This one cannot go unchallenged. Mark, the media must also now act actively. They should be very active by giving us what happened in the last theft. Publish it, let the Kenyans know this is where it ended, these are the reasons why these guys were acquitted or convicted. Number two, the media practitioners also should be very bold. People like Gathara here, who act on behalf of Kenyans through writing and so on, should tell us now, should write actively and tell us that the reason why we are recommending 1, 2, 3 is because the last cases have never seen the light of the day. Not just talking.
And I'm sure you'll see it on the Elephant.
I would want to see it.
Gathara?
I would want to see it.
The elephant.info.
All right, all right.
Okay.
Just check it out and check this out, what Daniel Onsari has left us here. This is what Season 2 NYS will look like. Season 2 is going to be bad news, and it is definitely bad news, that picture there. And you can expect a lot from a KOT in terms of this, just making light of the serious condition that we find ourselves in. Thank you for your time. Thank you for watching. My name is Mark Masai. Thank you to my guests for making time for us this evening and to the team that makes this possible. Arnold and Okalale Sas. Good night.